Welcome everyone back to Screenfish Radio and welcome to 2023. I am so excited. This is one of my favorite podcasts of the year. I love kicking off the new year, reflecting on the year that was, and continuing to look ahead to the year that is. And it's become tradition. I really do enjoy. He's welcome anytime on the show, but it seems to have fallen into tradition that Kevin McLenithan would come on to chat with us with our movie moments. So Kevin, welcome back. It's great to see you.
It's great to be back on Screenfish, Steve. I don't know how many years in a row has it been now that I've come on to do kind of the inaugural New Year's episode.
Honestly, I think it's been about 4 years. It's
Wow,
been
has
quite
it
a
really
while.
been?
Three, at least three. I think it's been four.
Well, I
So
mean, it's very exciting. And also I hadn't really thought about that way, that it's become sort of a tradition or an institution at this point. So now I better really, bring my A game so I don't disappoint. The pressure's on.
that's right. That's right. Well, that's what I wanted to communicate in that intro, is to lay down the groundwork.
No, it's
The
always
gauntlet has
fun.
been
I'm looking
lifted.
forward to it.
Yeah, I think so too. And this week we are doing double duty, as I said. We're going to be talking about Rian Johnson's Glass Onion. Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, because the title is this long. But we're going to be talking about Glass Onion a little bit later. But what I love about this episode every year is talking about our top three movie moments. Everybody this time of year is doing their top 10 films of the year, and that's a great list. It's an important list, as people discuss about the best of the years of film. But one of the things I love about movie moments is that anything can kind of go. You can have a film that wouldn't be up for Oscar contention, but sort of hits different, to you in that moment, and it's always exciting to sort of talk about these moments in a film that matter. And Kevin, I'm so glad you're here for this conversation. But maybe we can throw out some honorable mentions before we get to our top three. What have you got?
I mean, one of the first movie moments that sprang to mind when I was, kind of trying to sort things out was Steven Spielberg's The Fablemans. I mean, you never bet against Spielberg, right? Spielberg is, one of our greatest living filmmakers, and he knows his way around a movie, and so it's almost inevitable that kind of individual moments when it comes to that, he would be somewhere in the conversation. And so I was thinking about The Fablemans, like the last 5 seconds of that film, literally, where the Steven Spielberg alter ego on screen has just met one of his cinematic heroes, and he's sort of literally walking off into the sunset. And the advice he's just gotten was, it's always boring to have the horizon in the middle of the cinematic frame. You either need to have it at the very bottom or the very top. So Spielberg's shooting his younger self, kind of walking off into the sunset, and then at the very last minute, the camera kind of jars and adjusts so that the horizon is in a different spot in the frame. And it's just this really nice, playful moment that is very fitting for a movie about Spielberg kind of looking back at his past influences and his reasons for loving movies, and kind of like communicating to the audience that, like, he may be an American institution, but he's still learning and still finding things to love and play with movies. So I really liked that one a little bit, even though it didn't quite crack my top three.
Yeah, that is a great moment, and actually would be an honorable mention for me as well. I think The Fablemans. We had actually, I think it was with Wade. I had a conversation with Wade about The Fablemans last December, and there's something special about that film. But that it's the ending of that film that sort of hammers home the whole story in such a brief moment. And that particular scene, where they adjust the camera, is so simple and yet communicates so much. And I absolutely would be in mine as well. Honorable mentions for sure.
Yeah, I
I
also
love that.
really, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I also really liked the in Nope, Jordan Peele's Nope. There's a middle sequence in that one that's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from that playful moment in The Fablemans, where we see the immediate aftermath of a chimp attack on the set of a television show, and that moment was probably the most tense I've ever been in a movie theater all year. Just not knowing what's going to happen next and being really afraid for this young child actor who's hiding under a table and wondering what's going to happen to him. So, in a way, I feel like that's kind of a summation of 2022. There was a lot of diverse kinds of movies that came out this year, and so something as playful as that ending for The Fablemans and something as tense as that sequence in Nope, I think is, I don't know, it seems fitting somehow.
I'm glad you said that because I think when we get to the top three, one of the things that I've felt about this year, there were some great films, but this was also a year. I don't think I've said so many times that movie is bonkers as I have in the last 12 months because there have been so many films that have come for just out of nowhere and done the bizarre. And Nope is a phenomenal film, and this is why I like movie moments, so we can throw in a monkey or an ape attack or a chimp attack, because it's like that. That's an important moment um, in that for sure. And there are so many as well that I could throw in. I don't want to say them all because I know that after this airs, a few days later, I will be giving my top 10 movie moments. But another one I will share as an honorable mention, didn't crack my top three, was the funeral procession in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And I say that because I mean the film, that film certainly is one of, I think, one of the better Marvel films, but the funeral procession in that moment, I think, from our conversations I've had with people about the film and their experience of it, and I interviewed a woman who was involved in the film as well. There, because of the Chadwick Boseman death or passing, there was something special that was going on in the relationship between audience and film and cast in those moments. Um, the woman that I spoke with, forgive me, I cannot remember her name, but she plays the shaman, was leading that funeral, and she was saying that for her and for the rest of the cast, it was a real moment. This is not them saying goodbye to T'Challa. This is them saying goodbye to Bozeman. And I've had conversations with people who are just fans, and this mattered. This mattered to them. This was a very important moment in the year because Bozeman's relationship to pop culture is more than, say, Tony Stark snapping his fingers against Thanos and then he walks off into the sunset. So for me, I think I would have loved to have put that a little higher on my list, but I think it is one of those moments that mattered last year, or at least resonated.
Yeah, I mean, we lost a great one with Chadwick Boseman, right? Like just a great actor, such an incredible screen presence. So it's so fitting that uh, a film would kind of a film of the scale of the Black Panther sequel would sort of make space for a moment like that. That was really nice.
Actors pass away every year, but it was a unique relationship. And at the same time, how many times do you get an opportunity on screen to celebrate that same person in that way? It was so, but yeah, because it was more about Bozeman than about Marvel. There, I think it was really interesting.
Hmm.
But let's forget our honorable mentions here for a moment, then, Kevin. Let's move into the top three. What's your number three movie moment for 2022?
I mean, I couldn't neglect to include a scene from the film that was probably just the most fun cinematic experience for me all year. And that film is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, this is this has been a film that's been talked about a whole lot, and it's just got such a raucous energy to it and such a sense of possibility that anything can happen in this movie. And the crowd that I saw it with just was going bananas at this part. And I'm thinking of the scene. It's the first kind of major action scene that we get. It's when Ke Huy Quan, playing a character who up to this point in the film has been kind of like a milk toast husband, someone who's very meek, maybe a little bit ridiculous, suddenly snaps into a martial arts master, and he uses his fanny pack as sort of a set of nunchucks to wreak havoc on the henchmen who are coming after him. And I just remember sitting in the theater and witnessing Quan, undo his fanny pack and sort of whip it around like Bruce Lee in one of those movies, and just go to town. And just everybody was losing their minds about laughing at it, being excited by it. It was just an indelible moment. Easily my favorite moment from the entire film, and one of my favorite theater going experiences of the entire year. It's an encapsulation, I think, of what makes that film so much fun to watch.
Absolutely. I'm a huge, huge fan of Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think it's a really special film, and no spoilers, but it may pop up later on my list with some movie moments. But I can't deny that that particular scene is really special. It's not. I don't. You know what it reminded me of? Was '90s Jackie Chan,
Mm-hmm.
where you have this sense of play going on, but it's not a silly scene. Like it's an intense fighting scene, but there's a playfulness to it at the same time. And the moment where he pulls his fanny pack and it like snaps it is just phenomenal. It's literally I don't think I've cheered at a scene quite
it
like that.
it makes you want to cheer for it, not just sort of like mentally, but you want to give voice to that feeling of exhilaration somehow. And that's no small thing for a movie to accomplish.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a phenomenal pick and a great movie moment. Um, well, my number three is a bit of a cheat, so hopefully you can forgive me for this, but I will explain why it is. My number three movie moment has no actors, it has no dialogue. It is quite simply a disclaimer to introduce the movie RRR. Now, to open the film, if you're familiar with the film RRR, it opens with this disclaimer. I'm going to read it just so I get it right. No animals or birds were harmed during the making of the film. Horses, oxen, birds, tigers, wolves, bears, leopards, deer, fish, and snake shown in the movie are all computer generated. Um, this is relevant to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, we talked about the year of bonkers. RRR became sort of a global phenomenon. I think it's a remarkable film in its achievement. It is another film which I think has elevated, or at least in the pop culture scene, global cinema uh, in Hollywood and North America. And any film that opens with a disclaimer that the tigers, oxen, birds, fish, and deer are all computer generated, you're going to see some things you've never seen before. And RRR is one of those films. I mean, there's a man who throws a leopard at another guy, and a deer uh, gores another man in battle. And yet the film has a sweetness and a joy to it that it's not gore for the sake of gore, but this disclaimer to me was a reminder. Like for me, it was just a moment of joy because as I'm watching it, I'm like, what on earth is coming next? And you see these things at the end, and it's just sort of like, don't worry, we didn't hurt anybody. But this is sit on your seat and prepare because don't worry, we didn't hurt anybody or anything, but we are going to show you everything.
I mean,
And there's a certain magic to that.
oh man, I mean, magic is a good way to put it. You talk about crowd pleasers. RRR has to be mentioned in that conversation for sure. I mean, there are better movies I saw this year than RRR, but I
Sure.
feel like, again, similar to Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's just there's a sense of possibility in it. You just don't know what you're going to see next. I remember I was watching it at home for the first time, and I started it without my wife. Like it's a long movie, so she was busy with other things, and so she walked into the room about, oh, I want to say like 20 minutes in, and it was the scene where the two heroes rescue a child from a burning bridge, and
Yes.
it's this crazy stunt sequence, and then after that stunt sequence ends, that's when the title credits start, and Kyla's like, oh, I thought you were going to start this movie like 20 minutes ago. I was like, I did. And now we're getting to the title credits. It's a movie that's just filled to bursting with all sorts of things, including CGI animals doing insane things. It's got musical numbers. It's got high drama. It's got like religious undertones. It's got pretty much everything. And I don't know, like it's a worthy, I mean, any number of moments from that movie could have been chosen for either of our lists.
Yeah, I agree with you. You said, certainly there are better films, but there's something about this one that was special in so many ways. And again, movie moments. I didn't know what I was in for. I heard stories. I heard it's really good. It's wild, and but yeah. So it had to be on my list. Um, what about you? Number two.
So I'm going to maybe shift into a little bit of a quieter register for my next two picks. My number two is from the film Decision to Leave. This is a South Korean film from the master Park Chan-wook, and he's the sort of director who's just he's got such verve in his filmmaking. He just um all of his films have a hook, and I don't mean, I mean that in a couple of senses, and one sense of it is like a fish hook. It's like he gets that hook in you and then he drags the audience through the rest of the picture at a breakneck pace. He just there's a momentum to his films that just bring you along, and this is a movie that is very Hitchcockian, and is a little bit more of a slow burn than some of his other pictures. um the basic premise is there's a detective who's investigating a murder. The prime suspect is a beautiful Chinese immigrant, and he finds himself over the course of the investigation developing feelings for her. And it's a classic Hitchcockian setup, right? Like there's a mysterious woman, and there's questions of who's on the right or wrong side of the law, kind of moral ambiguity. It's all there. But there's a scene close to the beginning of the film where we kind of witness the interrogation between this detective and his suspect. And it starts off as an interrogation, and by the end of the interrogation, it's almost like a seduction. And we get this wonderful shot of he is sitting across from her in the interrogation room, across from a table. There's of course that one-way mirror where they can be observed by his partner. But of course, inside the interrogation room, they can only see their reflections in it. And Park shoots it so that I honestly don't even know how he achieved this effect in camera. There's no CGI or anything, but he shoots it so in one moment, the woman and her reflection is in focus. She's out of focus. Meanwhile, on the other side of the frame, the detective, he is in focus, but his reflection is out of focus. And over the course of their dialogue scene, the focus keeps shifting. where one is in focus, where the I'm not describing it very well, but basically that kind of dynamic keeps shifting back and forth over the course of the scene, and then at the end of the scene it switches so that the reflections are both in focus and the actual people are out of focus at the same time. And it's in that moment that you know that something has shifted, somebody has been seduced, and you spend the rest of the film kind of watching that game play out, where the detective is torn between his feelings, his desires, and also his knowledge that this woman that he's involved with might be really bad news. And it's just an incredible, it's romantic and concerning, and makes the audience kind of question their own allegiances. It's really complex and I love it.
You know, that I love the word that you use, complex, because that film absolutely is. This is a great pick because this is a film. I mean, it takes you on such a ride, an emotional ride. It's not wild, it's not energetic, it's not a fever pitch, but every character you're engaged with, and it's Park Chan Wook. Is
Mm-hmm.
that who it is? Is that
Mm-hmm.
what, yeah, is his visual style here is unbelievable. You know, like the way you're describing that there, but it feels. I'm not sure if that's the same. I think this is the same scene where he's staring from outside and yet he's in the room. Do you know what
Uh,
I'm talking
that
about?
that's a
Or is this
different
the?
scene, but I also really love that where he's like surveilling her, but
Yeah,
the way it's shot is like he's in the room with her, not across the street with a pair of binoculars.
yeah, there's an intimacy to this
Mm-hmm.
film which is surprising. You know, I just thought it was going to be another crime drama. You know, is the good girl good or bad, and the gritty cop, and all the things that you could write itself. It's more than that, and there's an emotional complexity to this film that I think is excellent. And that moment you picked there is phenomenal.
It's a really adult film, and I mean that, and just it feels like a film for grown-ups. Like there's no sex, there's very little violence, and yet it feels very mature. And part of that is just the complexity and the way that Park is able to make you feel multiple things at once with just the same scene. And I don't know, I think that's the mark of a great filmmaker.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's a great pick, great film. My number two film, or my number two movie moment, is maybe a little familiar for you.
Mhm.
It is from Everything Everywhere All at Once, but a different side of the film. Because, and this is what I appreciate about this film in so many ways, is that there are so many different sides to it. It's a family drama, it's a wild action, it's a comedy. Um, but there is one particular scene that I thought was culturally poignant, and it's the scene where uh, Stephanie Sue, if I'm correct in the name, has collected her mother and brought her to stare into an evil everything bagel. And for those of you who have not seen the film, that sounds nuts. Well, the whole film is nuts. But this particular moment, I'm absolutely struck me the idea that the world, the information that has been collected, the knowledge that has been collected, has absolutely shattered and broken this character to the point that nothing matters anymore. The bagel, the center of the bagel, is just an abyss that keeps on going. And I know for me watching the film, I found that the psychology of Everything Everywhere All at Once, for all of its benefits, the psychology of the film struck the overall cultural psychology in a way that a lot of other films haven't. And working with themes of mental health, and at a time where we are overwhelmed by so much information all the time. here, getting pings on our Google reps, and I'm screwing up all the language or anything, and tweets and information and of everything going on, and how that absolutely has broken us down. There's something about this film that resonated with me on that level, and I really thought that this moment was somewhat profound on its understanding of the way that of where we sort of are at, or at least where I feel like we're at as a North American culture right now.
Yeah, the one of the interesting things about Everything Everywhere is that it is able to evoke kind of those very deep emotional reactions, while also, we spend a lot of time talking about how off the wall it is, and it is that, but it's also able to evoke these deep, sincere emotional reactions with its metaphors and its thematic thrust as well. And I think that that's also really interesting balancing act for them to be able to pull off. So and that image of a bagel with literally everything on it, so that it kind of collapses into a black hole, I think it's a kind of a silly image, and but the more the movie unpacks it, the more it kind of sneaks under your defenses and makes you think about what the true meaning of that is, and that's a nice trick.
It's in some ways the film reminds me of the Matrix when it first came out in 1999, because I think everybody picked at it and sort of looked at it. Whoa, this is really cool. We've never seen this before, but there was something under the surface. Um, the Matrix was a product of its time, and I feel like everywhere all at once is exactly that. Not the Matrix. That it's a product of its time, which I find so fascinating. But absolutely. Well, Kevin, I can't wait to hear your number one. But before we hear your number one, I'd like to hear some more. So we have some friends of Screenfish that are going to share with us their favorite movie moment of 2022. So let's hear from them first.
This is Robert Bellissimo from Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. My favorite film moment in 2022 was seeing The Florida Project for the first time, written and directed by Sean Baker. This is a filmmaker that if you don't know, you gotta know. He explores movies about marginalized people, and I feel that he is the most exciting filmmaker working today, and this is a film that left me speechless and emotionally drained. So if you haven't seen it, check it out.
Hey everyone, it's Julie Levac. I've missed you so much. 2022 was an unintentional hiatus year for me, and it was truly one of the most difficult years of my life. And so, my favorite movie moment from 2022, when I was actually able to sit down and watch a movie, was The Woman King. Um, I was in a really kind of dark place at the time, and I was able to go out with one of my closest friends, watch The Woman King in theaters, and it just pumped me up. It really kind of, made me feel like I could go out there and conquer the world again. I'm thinking of the scene with Lashana Lynch and Sheila Ateem dancing and chanting, and I was just like, yes, this is exactly what I needed in this moment. And I'm ready to watch it again, actually, because I'm like 2023. Let's go, give me some motivation. So yeah, I would say definitely that moment watching The Woman King, and just watching these incredible women play incredible women. It never fails.
My movie moment of the year was when David Lynch showed up as John Ford in The Fablemans. And then he asks Sammy Fableman, "So what do you know about art, kid?"
Alrighty, Daniel here, and I think my top movie moment from 2022 has to be from Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I know, controversial. I really liked the film. I know it's gotten some mixed things, but my favorite part would have to be when Doctor Strange puts Wanda into the mirror dimension, and she breaks out using the water reflections and like the gong, and then when she breaks out, she's kind of like gross and bones are broken and she kind of reforms herself. I just thought it was super creepy and super cool, and I like that kind of creepy stuff, honestly. So that's probably my top movie moment from 2022. Peace.
Well, thank you everyone who contributed. I really appreciate it. And, certainly those are all great picks. But Kevin, our number one, let's hear your number one movie moment of 2022.
I have come on this podcast episode to give all of your listeners the hard sell on a movie called After Yang. This came out back in February of 2022, so almost a year ago at this point. And I remember seeing it in the theater and thinking that if I saw a better movie all year, it would be a miracle. And here we are in 2023, and I did not see a better movie than After Yang all year. Not because the other good movies didn't come out, but just because After Yang is just that good. This is a movie. It's set in a future setting where there are artificial intelligences that have been put into androids, and these androids often come to live with families that are trying to ease the transition for adopted children. And the android acts as sort of a parent, a sibling, a best friend for these children, and becomes part of the family. And at the very beginning of the film, the android that's living with this one family, made up of Colin Farrell, Jodie Turner-Smith, and their young daughter, the android suffers a malfunction and is, for all intents and purposes, dead. And the family kind of has to come to terms with what he meant to them, and also kind of what he meant in general as an artificially intelligent being, not a human being. So that's the setup. That's kind of well trod territory for anybody who's ever watched a movie about androids or artificial intelligence knows that this is going to be a movie that's interested in what it means to be sentient, and what it means to have a soul, and what it means to be alive and have a life that matters. And the way that After Yang explores that is by introducing the concept that Yang, the android who dies at the beginning of the film, Yang has been recording little snippets of memory throughout the course of his entire existence. So he's been sort of recording what he sees and then kind of storing that away in his memory banks. And nobody knows about this until an expert kind of tells Colin Farrell's character that these memories exist in Yang, and he can watch them if he wants to. So the moment that I'm thinking of for this list is when Colin Farrell's character puts on kind of these special eyeglasses and gets to experience this constellation of memories that Yang has built up over the course of his entire existence, and sort of just experience life 5 seconds at a time. Just these 5-second little snatches that are not sequential in any way. They aren't connected in any way. And yet, as the film takes the audience through this montage of 5-second memories, the overall effect is to create the impression of Yang as a person, and also just the sheer wonder of the world around him. The fact that he's recording mundane details like the wind in the trees, or the way that a husband runs his fingers through his wife's hair in the living room, just in an unguarded moment. And the first time that we see those memories in this film just knocked me flat. I just fell under its spell. I became enchanted by it. And it really made me think about what it means for me to be alive, and what the wonder of just being alive from moment to moment in a world and receiving the world as it is. I've seen this movie twice now, and the second time I saw it, I found myself thinking to myself, is this one of my favorite movies of all time? It might be.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen to me very often with a brand new release. Like, it's, that's a high bar. And I don't know, After Yang clears it. And that first memory montage is a big reason why.
Yeah, After Yang is a very special film. I absolutely agree with you. Only reason the moments didn't land on my list is not because the film's not great. It's because the film sort of flows lyrically, and there weren't a lot. Even though it's about moments, there weren't a lot of moments that stuck out because it all sort of flows together. It flowed together for me as this sort of lyrical exploration into the soul. And also, what is there anybody who had a better year than Colin Farrell? Like
Oh man.
anyone?
Th-
Um,
at least 3 great performances, great with a capital G. Just the man's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, he's always been great, and I mean, I don't know what's going to happen come Oscar time, and but I'll tell you, if he wins, it won't just be for Banshees. It'll be because he and every role was different. Every
Mhm.
role was different. He did not play the same character twice. Whether it's the Penguin, whether it was in Banshees, or whether it was in After Yang, it was a different guy every single time. But yeah, that is a special film. I understand what you're saying because it really is unique. I saw it just before it came out on video. I think I think I saw it in April, and I I just saw it was a movie about an android and Colin Farrell, and I had all sorts of ideas of what it was probably going to be, and I was wrong on all of them. So yeah, I it's a great film and an even better pick. Wonderful.
I absolutely. I mean, I could go on and on about just this film, but this is not an episode about After Yang or why I love it. So maybe we should just call it there. I'm really curious to hear about your number one, though.
Okay, well, my number one sort of flies in the face of my number two moment because my favorite moment of the year actually comes from Darren Aronofsky's The Whale, and stars Brendan Fraser as a 600-pound man on the last week of his life. He's estranged from his wife and his daughter, or his ex-wife and his daughter, I should say. Living alone, he has health problems. His only regular visitor is his caretaker and friend, played by Hong Chow, who gives a wonderful performance. Um, but what I really connected with in this film is that, and this is another this. You, Colin Farrell had a great year. Brendan Fraser did one film, and it's a remarkable performance. Takes a character that could have either been incredibly sad or the butt of a joke, and imbues him with such a hopefulness that it was actually shocking for me. And there's one particular moment towards the end of the film, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for anybody who's watching because I certainly don't mean it to be. But the characters are just decimated by the world around them, and how everything is absolutely been soul crushing. And and he said, and he finally looks at them. He says, "But don't you see? Don't you get it? People are amazing." And I have to admit, those 3 words are astounding to me because we live in a time where we have seen the last few years how people are not amazing. Quite frankly, people are not amazing. But there is a hope in this film, and a belief that humanity has has the potential, um, and just the inner, not the potential is not the word, the inner quality that they are amazing and they have the potential to do great things. And I mean, as a pastor, I'm like, this is imago teaching right here. There's something incredible about this recognition, and there's such sadness around the moment, and this there he communicates that with such force that it absolutely broke me, and had to be my number one moment of the year.
Yeah, shades of is it Psalm 8 that talks about, what is man that you think of him? You've made him a little lower than the angels.
Yeah.
I might be butchering it there, but it's seems like it's kind of that sentiment that we, there is so much wrong with the world thanks to people, and yet we are made in the image of God. We are incredible creatures, and sometimes we need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And I mean, it's not a film that I think it will not get nominated for Best Picture. I'm sure. I think certainly he will be nominated, and she may be as well. But it's also not a film that's naive. It's not a film that just says, "Don't worry about the world. Everything's good." It's not like "Forget your troubles. Come on, get happy." It's not that type of film. If anything, it's sitting in those troubles, and to make that acknowledgement, I think is just, I don't know. There was something about that hit different for me this year. It is not as subtle as After Yang. Let's put it that way, but it was for me very powerful.
Hmm.
Um, but Kevin, thank you. This is great. This has been a lot of fun with our top three picks of the year, our movie moments. Maybe you at home you have some as well that are key things that from last year that really resonated with you that are worth sharing. And actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, but since we're on, share them in the comments below. If you have those things, please share along by all means. Get those out there. But Kevin, for the rest of our time together, I would love to speak to you about Glass Onion, a
Hmm.
Knives Out mystery. Glass Onion was written and directed by Rian Johnson and tells the story of tech billionaire Miles Braun, who invites his friends for a getaway on his private Greek island. When someone turns up dead, Detective Benoit Blanc returns and is put on the case. The film stars everyone in Hollywood. Uh, the film stars Madeline Klein, Daniel Craig, Kate Hudson, Jessica Henwick, Edward Norton, Catherine Hahn, Janelle Monáe, Ethan Hawke, Dave Bautista, Lamar Odom Jr., Angela Lansbury is in this film.
Stephen
Um,
Sondheim
Even
somehow.
Sondheim. And as I said, and is currently streaming on Netflix. And as always, this podcast is rated S for spoilers. But Kevin, I need to know what you think of Glass Onion.
So this is a film that I actually got the chance to see on the big screen, and I think it's a shame that it, a lot of people, like just didn't get the chance to see it in the theater, because I think it's another one of these films we were talking about, Everything Everywhere All at Once and RRR just being wonderful communal experiences. And I think Glass Onion falls into a similar category where it's nice to experience it in a theater with strangers, and just enjoy the journey it takes you on together. This is a film that kind of aims to be a crowd pleaser, and does it with, I don't know. I really like Rian Johnson as a director. I think he's got a similar instinct, I guess, for both being stylistically interesting while also being a crowd pleaser, kind of like Steven Spielberg, or even Christopher Nolan, in not in the same way in terms of like thematic interest, but just in terms of the way that he's able to make something that's both formally interesting and also super entertaining. So I had a good time with Glass Onion. I don't think it's as good as Knives Out, and we can probably talk a little bit about why that might be. I found myself cooling on it a little bit more, whereas I still think pretty highly of Knives Out. But I do think it's a fun experience, and if you were all in for Knives Out, you'll probably be all in for Glass Onion too.
I love that you referred to it as an experience because I feel like this is a party. And I feel very fortunate that I got to see it at TIFF this year. I saw it during the film festival. Johnson brought it to Toronto, and he was so excited to present the film. I was at the premiere, he came out, and I remember him saying this into the microphone. He said, "I hope you love it. I can't believe we're doing this. We're at a movie with people." And it was like, for him, it was like, "I'm excited to show you the film because we're going to watch it together." And however many people were in that space, it was just this, it was this joy. There's this joy to this franchise. Um, and see, this is the thing. I agree with you 100%. I think Netflix is insane for sticking to their streaming model exclusively. It was Johnson that fought for the week of theatrical. And then they said, "Oh yeah, we'll bring it back in maybe February for a theatrical run." But it's all, the party's over then. It's a little bit, we've already had the party, and now you're gonna, oh no, it'll come back. It's not that type of film. You want to be there for that initial experience, see it with people, um, and just enjoy it. Like, it's a ride. It's a I was going to say a pop phenomenon, but it's a pop experience at any rate. And there are so few films. I can't say films that aren't like that, because lots of films are pop experiences. But I would say that Johnson has such a joy to play with his audience, that his films are almost always special to be present for and see with other people. I like that you said that about comparing him to, comparing his understanding of the audience with Spielberg and Nolan. I really feel that Johnson understands all the tropes. He likes the same films that the average person does, but then he's willing to flip them over, whatever franchise that may be. So with the Star Wars films, one of the things that upset Star Wars fans is that he gave you essentially Empire Strikes Back, but he flipped some things on their ear to make it fresh, give it a new look. Looper gave it a bit of a Terminator feel, but kept it fresh by, here's the tropes, but I'm going to do it my way. There's something I like to play with these toys out of the box. And Glass Onion, the Knives Out and Glass Onion films, I feel like they do that with the murder mystery genre. It's like we already know the setup, we already know what's going to happen, but he teases you with things that you don't need. A guy on the beach, or an intern that has no lines, essentially, and it's like, oh well, it must be them. They're going to be the murderer because they're hardly in it. The Scooby Doo motto. And he knows that. He's like, no, they're just there. like the stoner that lives on the beach has no business being in the film. He's there to give you another suspect, just in the back of your mind. I love that about his work.
I think it's interesting because I think that Knives Out definitely accomplishes that, where it's it might zig where you expect it to zag, but it's a film that feels very much like a bit of a throwback to sort of like parlor room mysteries, where everybody kind of gathers in the same place, and that the detective is going to explain his master stroke of insight with them all in the same room, sort of like that's kind of the sturdy bones of genre storytelling that I think that film does so well. I think maybe one reason why Glass Onion has cooled a little bit for me on subsequent viewings, because I've seen this one twice as well, is that I think maybe it gets a little bit too cute for its own good. There's a lot of little plot curly cues and red herrings in the film, where it's kind of, as you're watching it the first time, it's sort of, you don't know what to expect, and it does keep you guessing, which is nice. Like, it's a mystery. You don't want to be able to figure it all out or have things be really obvious. But I think in doing that, Johnson almost kind of clevers himself out of the same simple genre pleasures that Knives Out nailed so well. And that might be why, even though I had a good time with Glass Onion, I don't know that I would return to it with the same eagerness that I would with Johnson's other genre work, whether it's Knives Out or Looper or even The Last Jedi. I think that those films kind of knew how to deliver the goods. I think Glass Onion is like, I'm going to deliver the goods, but I'm going to be clever about it. And I don't know that that was really necessary.
See, that's interesting because that was one of the things I liked about the film. I liked the film. I liked the fact that it was winking at me the whole way. Even down to the point that the same sort of revealing speech at the end, Blanc is standing there and he says, this has been the problem the whole time. I was looking for the mysteries or the pieces, but it's just that he's an idiot." It's like, it's so simple. You're just a moron. He goes into it, and it's I to me, I mean, if he had, I agree with you that I think Knives Out may be a better film. It's hard to. I think it's going to be very hard for Johnson to continue this franchise because he's always going to have to continue to outthink himself. And so this sort of twisty turny thing, I don't think it's going anywhere, because as these films unravel, I think he's just enjoying doing them so much, but he's got to continue to play with the audience because the audience is onto him now. So him being cute in this film was his way of trying to stay ahead. But the thing that I did think that about Knives Out that was a little better, and maybe you can respond to this too. Knives Out, for all its playfulness, had an edge of seriousness that carried all the way through the film, and really laid into, really caught fire with a bit of a justice aspect. Certainly, there was a number of things. I mean, it may be using that parlor room drama, but the relationship between Ana de Armas and that family took on a different level. Like, it became about more than murder to me. Whereas this one really felt like going away for the weekend and doing a murder mystery game with friends.
I mean, there might be something to that. Glass Onion feels a little bit more like a lark. I think the key might be that Knives Out had Ana de Armas as Marta, and she's such an ordinary person. Like, there's nothing particularly remarkable about her. She's kind of playing the straight woman to everybody else's more colorful characters. And I think that might be kind of the little grace note that Knives Out has, where that Glass Onion doesn't, because everybody in Glass Onion is kind of this very colorful person. Even kind of the Marta adjacent character in Glass Onion, the character played by Janelle Monáe, she's also kind of she goes big. Like, she's got some very, she's got that very, there's a persona there, I guess. She's not just an ordinary person. She's also, in her own way, larger than life, or at least goes big in a way that Ana de Armas kind of was more underplaying a lot of things. And I think that makes Glass Onion fun, because it is like all these characters are really colorful. And I think Johnson excels at finding just nice little character details to just perfectly build out a character and make them interesting. I think that's a triumph in Glass Onion here, just as it was in Knives Out. But I think if everybody is kind of playing at that level, it loses something. You need kind of a foil like Marta in there to remind us of maybe the more human-sized stakes.
No, that's a great point. And I think that's, that is certainly a key difference with this film, is that everything feels big, and also the setting does that as well. For crying out loud, you've got them in a literal giant glass onion as opposed to an estate in a grounded area. Um, this is he allows his characters here to take on big roles, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but I forgot how good Kate Hudson can be. Um, I haven't seen her in a role in a while where I just thought, wow, but she just bursts onto the scene with an energy I haven't seen in so long. And Johnson's casting for these characters is just wonderful. Like everyone in it, but again, everyone's allowed to play the game. This is a film that feels like it's set up. Be larger than life. Everybody gets their moment. Even Dave Bautista, who's really come along. I'm continue. Dave Bautista continues to surprise me. I have to admit. I'm not. I just impressed that there's more of a range that I thought we were going to get when he first started making films. Um, but there's certainly everything. Everyone in this film is a little bit bigger than Knives Out, and I think that I see what you're saying in that regard, because Knives Out kept it a little more grounded um, to keep things moving.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that the Glass Onion is without its pleasures. I think Johnson really does a great job with just the way that he shapes the cast performances, so that it's not like wacky. It doesn't feel like a farce. And it doesn't, these still feel like plausible human beings. And there are so many well chosen details. Like Jenny Egan's costumes in this film are incredible. Like this is maybe the first film I've seen where and of course it takes place in 2020, so it is a COVID lockdown movie. This is the first major film I've seen to use masks as a character building detail, which characters choose to wear them, which characters choose not to, the kinds of masks that they wear. Kate Hudson's character, rolls up on this, this big party gathering wearing essentially like a lace mask that basically does nothing. And it's such a perfectly well chosen detail for the kind of character she's playing. And he does that with all of these characters. And I think that those well chosen details, I think, are really wonderful. And even if I didn't love it as much as Knives Out, it goes down smoothly. And I think a lot of the credit goes to those kinds of touches.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, and that's, again, I keep saying it's a party film, and I think it's not just you can tell that they're having a party making it, which apparently they did murder mystery nights every weekend as a cast. They would gather and do them themselves, um, and but it's a party experience as well, as we were talking about before. It's not I don't want to watch it for the first time by myself on Netflix. That's not the way to watch this film. It truly is something that should be seen with other people just for a night of fun, but good fun, like not like it's actually well written, well scripted fun. It's an enjoyable experience across the board. Fun fact: you mentioned that scene where they're all pulling up on the dock. Um, did you know that Ethan Hawke was not supposed to be in this film?
I didn't. I was so amazed when he showed up just for that single scene, just being this weird guy squirting anti-COVID medication to everyone's mouths. I didn't know what he was doing in the movie, but I was here for it.
He was shooting Moon Knight in Budapest, and he heard they were shooting there, and so he popped over for the day, did his scene, and went back to doing his Marvel gig.
That's amazing. And it might be, I'm a little bit of an MCU skeptic, as you know, so it does my heart good to know that like something good came out of the MCU machine, which is Ethan Hawke is in this movie.
But I think, again, that taps into the vibe of the film. It's sort of like, oh, I want to be there for that. You know what I did think was interesting about the film? I talked briefly about the justice angle of Knives Out. I felt Knives Out plays with old money. This one very much tries to play with the idea of new money. I know there's been comparisons with Miles's character with Elon Musk. Johnson continues to deny it. He said it's a total coincidence because I think Musk bought Twitter just before the film was released, and all chaos ensued from that. But this is a world where social influencers are held in as highly regarded as politicians, all on this island. They're all sort of equals, where all of these characters, they've all got their agendas, they've all got their things going on. But I mean, Dave Bautista, that's his thing. He's just so, what is the first character or first person to get 1 million followers on Twitch or whatever they announce. And yet he's sitting across the room from a politician who wants to change the world. And I just think that's such a fascinating look. I mean, I guess you could make the same argument that, well, this is just, you needed current characters. But every one of these characters is making their money in a different way and all sort of held up against each other. And I think that's an interesting setup that sets itself apart from the first film.
It's definitely evidence, I think, that Rian Johnson just pays attention to the way the world works. Whether or not you buy his explanation that he didn't actually base Ed Norton's character in this film on Elon Musk, like, even if you don't believe that, like, it is not uncommon to have kind of these tech CEOs who are sort of mythologized for their genius. And then you find out later on that, well, no, they just were very good at surrounding themselves with very talented people who did all the actual work. And then they just took the credit because they were the CEO. I mean, that was kind of Steve Jobs' whole deal. He didn't do the programming and a lot of the engineering. He just kind of was the guy, the figurehead. And so I think that's something that is just really well observed about how there's this mystique around him. And then you find out, like, oh no, he's just kind of a moron who has lots of money. And similarly, I think the film is also really perceptive about showing how the thing that unites all these people, the Twitch streamer, the kind of airheaded fashionista, the person who's running for elected office, the serious-minded, like, man of science, the engineer, they all seem very different. But the one thing they have in common is they all take their privilege and their wealth for granted. And those are the things that they really value at the end of the day, is being the sort of person who can have influence through those things. So when we get to the end of the movie and that all goes up in a puff of smoke, it's really interesting how Johnson shows that they're all united in one thing, and that's that they take their wealth and positions of prestige for granted. And when those things are threatened, they're no different from each other. They will claw and threaten and backstab to keep that from happening. And they all react with the same amount of horror when their position is threatened. And I think that that's also very perceptive and sneakily political. And I appreciated that touch in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do appreciate Johnson's way of, like you said, of sneak. I like that word, sneakily politically. Because his films feel relevant, and even if sometimes you're not always entirely sure why, but they feel current. In a film like this, and certainly the way that the relationships between the characters. I mean, you're not thinking about that. This isn't a film that's trying to hit you over the head with any particular meaning. It's just embedded in the characters and the stories in a way that you can draw out of it and say, okay, I see what he's doing here and where this connects to our culture. And I love that about his writing. It's just, oh, I love it. Well, I mean, Kevin, here we are. I mean, this is, we're wrapping up the episode here, but before we do that, we should screen it or skip it. Glass Onion, screen it or skip it?
I think screen it. It's worth seeing. It's a good time, especially if you like whodunits. Like it's a good time. It's worth seeing.
Yeah, it breaks my heart to say screen it, and I will tell you why. I don't think this is a film you should watch on Netflix alone for the first time by yourself if you can avoid it. I just wish it was in theaters when I say it. And because it's not in theaters, if you're watching it, if you're going to stream it on Netflix, if you have friends that can come over, do it with them. Like it's a it. This is a communal experience film to be enjoyed together. There are lots of things on Netflix you can watch by yourself, so save this for a party. I just
invite some friends over, pop some popcorn, just have a good time with it. I think that's the ideal way to experience it.
Yeah, maybe get some of Jared Leto's kombucha and
his hard kombucha. Yes.
hard kombucha. Hard kombucha. I love I love when Dave Bautista's in the pool. Hey, booch me, and they throws it to him in the water. It's great. But absolutely, absolutely, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming on. I love chatting with you. I always love the opportunity to have you here. How can our listeners connect with you? How can they keep up with what you're doing?
Well, I do co-host Seeing and Believing still. So that's a podcast that, you can locate on pretty much any app where podcasts are found. So you can look us up on there. Sarah Welch Larson and I release an episode pretty much every week. We just recorded our own best of 2022 episode yesterday. So that ought to be probably in our feed by the time this episode airs. So you can check us out there. I used to be on Twitter. I am no longer on Twitter, thanks to aforementioned muskery. So now if anyone wants to find me in a public place on the internet, they can look for me on Letterboxd. Just, find me at Kevin McLenithan on Letterboxd. That's where I jot down movie thoughts and, keep a diary of what I've seen. If you are on the newfangled social media site Post, I'm also there at McLenithan is my handle on there, just as it was on Twitter. So those are the places people can find me. But Seeing and Believing is keeping on trucking, so that's the main place.
How many episodes have you guys done now? I know Sarah's on the show now, but how many episodes have you done with Seeing and Believing?
The one that we just recorded is number 364.
Oh my word. That's incredible.
I recently had the realization that I've been doing Seeing and Believing now for about 7 years, which is crazy. Like it didn't really occur to me until I had the realization that, oh yeah, 364 episodes. That's about 7 years if we do one every week. So it's been going on a long time.
Or 1 year if you do one every day.
If anyone wants to, marathon an episode, that's literally how long it would take you listening to one episode of Seeing Believing every single day. It's an entire year. So plenty of listening materials if you want to dig into our archives for sure.
Somebody somewhere is going to do a podcast and podcast their journey listening to your podcast over the course of a year.
Oh man.
There it is.
That I fear to go back and listen to Seeing and Believing number 1, just because we didn't know what we were doing back then. So everything was so rough. So I don't know if I'd recommend necessarily that somebody do that, but it might be an interesting podcast journey, I guess.
That's there it is. There it is. And please go back and watch the first one. Maybe for your 400th episode, go back and listen to the first one and just say, huh, so that's what it was like, was it? I guess that would be sometime this year, would be episode 400, be later in the fall. So
yeah. Wow, you're right. I don't know. We'll have to think on that. I worry that if I go back and listen to that first episode now, like I'll be like the guy at the end of Last Crusade, where I just suddenly like my skin melts off, and my eyes roll back in my head, and bad things happen. So we'll see.
That's not the cup of a carpenter. Anyway, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. This is always a pleasure to chat with you. I really appreciate your insight, and it's great. Absolutely, check out Seeing and Believing. It's a great show. I love the rapport that you have with Sarah, and certainly we've known each other for some years now.
Mm-hmm.
For you at home, as always, you can find us wherever podcasts are available. And you can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button, as they say. And as always, if you go to the podcast page, you can download and look up on screenfish.net. You can download Fishing for More, which are some small group questions to help get the conversation started where you are as well. And we will be back next week, and I'm looking forward to be back as well. I realized this is a lesson I've learned the hard way, Kevin. I used to announce what episode it was, and then something would happen and it would change. So now I'm just telling you to come back next week because we do have another episode from you.
I mean, the hazards of a long backlogs. You gotta, scheduling difficulties sometimes throw a wrench into the matter.
It's true. So thank you again, Kevin. And for you at home, we started the conversation. This was Screenfish.